You're in the right place if you want to learn new things while moving items from the to-do list to the ta-da list. I've been listening to podcasts since forever, and I love how they liven up and let me learn new things while I do repetitive tasks or chores around the house. In this video, I'll show you how to access podcasts and then some of my favorite shows to listen to as a piano teacher. If you are not new to podcasts and you already know how to open the app on your phone and get shows, subscribe to new shows and all that goodness, then you can skip ahead to the part where I give you my favorite shows for the recommendation. Otherwise, stick around and I'm going to show you exactly how to access podcasts on both Apple devices as well as Android. We're going to start with an Android phone, and the first method actually works no matter what device you're on. If you're on a computer, if you're on an iPad, an iPhone, an Android phone, a Windows tablet, whatever, you can just search for the podcast name and listen to it on the website or podcast directory. So I type in Vibrant Music Teaching Podcast, and in this case, in my podcast, you can find it on our own website. That's what showed up first in Google for me, or on the podcast directory apps as well. So any of those places are good. And if you click through, for example, just to the Vibrant Music Teaching site, we have all the episodes on one page right there. And you can listen to the most recent one up the top, or you can scroll through all of them and listen to any of our previous episodes, totally free. What this doesn't let you do is subscribe to shows. And really the magic of podcasts for me is I can go into my podcast app, whichever phone I'm on, I can go into the podcast app and I'll have a list of the latest shows that have been added. So once you've subscribed to a few different shows, you have their episodes automatically added to your library, which means you have a constant stream to choose from. And that can be really handy rather than going and searching for the website, trying to remember what it was called. Oh, was it Vibrant Music Teachers or Vibrant Music Teaching? Probably both will get you to my podcast, but you get what I'm saying. You have to actually remember what something was and look it up at the moment when you want it, which just isn't going to happen most of the time. You're going to give up and just turn on the radio. So that's why actually subscribing to the shows is what I would recommend. Again, we're going to start on the Android device. That's a little bit more finicky. You can skip forward to the iPhone version. That's even easier. The Android phone, the reason most Android phones is a little bit more finicky is because they don't come with a podcast app pre-installed. That's starting to change on some devices. But for example, this Huawei, it didn't come with any podcast apps installed. I have actually tried quite a few. I used to be on Android all the time and then I've switched to iPhone more recently. So I've tried a lot of podcast apps because I've been listening to podcasts for a really long time. I'm not sure exactly when I started, but it's a long time before Serial, which was the first popular show, came into being. So it's been a while. Now, I've tried many of them. Some of them are better than others, and some have features that are better than others for certain people. At the end of using my Android device, my favorite was Pocket Casts. So that's the one we'll look at. What you're going to do is go to the Play Store, or the Google Play Store as it's called, and then search for the podcast app name. In this case, it's called Pocket Cast. Sorry, there's an S on that. Pocket Cast, and then I already have it installed. You would just click install and wait for it to download onto your phone. Then you're going to open the app and start subscribing to shows. So you can go to Discover, and that will let you search up the top. You can search for whatever you want. I'm going to search again for Vibrant Music Teaching Podcast. So that's it right now. Now, I had already subscribed to that earlier when I was testing. I'm going to unsubscribe there and click on it again. So this is what it looks like. If you are not subscribed, you just hit the subscribe button. And now when you go to podcasts and scroll to the bottom, that will be in your list and you can click on it and go there. But the real magic is in filters, and you can go there to new releases and you can create other filters as well. But the simplest is just new releases. And then if we've just released an episode, it's going to be at the top of your feed right there, along with any other shows you've subscribed to in the order of when they were released. Some other apps I've tried on Android are Podbean and Stitcher. Podbean, the interface was a little bit awkward. I did get used to it, but it worked for quite a while, so that was fine. Stitcher, I used for a while. I prefer that interface, but they add their own ads in, which I just think is a bit jammy. Because a podcast may have ads already in it, and that's fine with me. But the podcast app adding them in just felt a bit gross. So I switched from there to Pocket Cast, and I was happier with that in the end. Now we're going to switch to the iPhone. And if you have an iPhone or an iPad even, it's really easy because Apple has its own podcast player and it will pre-install it on your phone. Also on a Mac computer, it works the same. And what's really handy is that you can keep it synced across your computer and your phone, any of your Apple devices, and you can also play it from HomePod, all that stuff, which makes the interconnectivity of Apple devices really, really handy, which is really why I switched to iPhone in the end. Now, the podcast app is simply called Podcasts. It's purple and it has like a little dude with circles around him. So that's where you go for podcasts. And that's what the app looks like. Now you can search for any show you're looking for, such as Vibrant Music Teaching, our test podcast, for obvious reasons. And then you'll see the shows right there. You just tap on it. Apple Podcasts have changed something more recently in that the follow button is not as immediately apparent. It's that little tick in the corner. So if I click on that, it'll say unfollow show because I'm currently followed. So I'm going to do that. And then we'd click it and then we tap on the plus to follow. And then the tick appears saying we are followed. If you find that awkward to tap, which it can be, especially on a mini like this one, you can go to the 3 dots in the corner. And that will also show you where you can follow the show. Once your show is followed, it will show up in your Listen Now area. So if there's a new episode, it'll be right at the top there. And you can also have different views there and look for new shows right there in Apple Podcasts. Apple Podcasts is a very simple app. It's very straightforward. Once you realize it's there, you should be able to just navigate your way through it by searching for shows, following them, and then tapping on them to listen. So now that you're up and running and listening to podcasts, you've got your foot in the door, what should you listen to? I'm just going to give you a small taste of my favorite shows right here, but there are loads of them out there now and there's more being added all the time, which is absolutely wonderful. I love it. We'll start with the podcasts that are specifically about music teaching for music teachers. Know that I have a list of all the shows I'm mentioning here, as well as a lot more on the blog. So if you follow the link in the description, you'll be able to see what other shows I like and get direct links to all the ones I'm mentioning here as well, if you forget the name or something like that. The first 2 I'm going to mention are my own shows. We have Vibrant Music Teaching, which is a podcast I started several years ago now. It's been running for quite a while. So if you haven't ever listened, you've got basically 3 years of back episodes to listen to. Each episode is very short. 10 to 20 minutes, normally around 15 to 20, but some are even shorter than that. So they're really handy when you just need to clean a few dishes or sweep the floor and you want to be able to listen to a complete episode and just be done, or you're going for a quick walk with your dog, or you can line up several in a row, of course, and do a longer walk with your dog. Our newer show is called Teaching Studio Stories. Those episodes are about 30 minutes-ish, and those are interviews with teachers like you from all around the world, from absolutely everywhere. And they're not interviews with specialists or experts in particular areas of teaching. I've nothing against those shows. There are several of those out there and I love them. But what I wanted to do was something different. I wanted to show all of us that we're more alike than we are different, that everyone has mistakes they've made, times that they felt like they could have done a better job, and different ways of doing things, and that's okay. We're still a global community. So you can find that in your podcast app. That's called Teaching Studio Stories. Or if you want to find both shows, search for my name. I'm Nicola Cantan. That's spelled Can-Tan, Cantan. I'm going to mention 2 other shows. That's it. And for the rest, you'll have to go to the blog post link to find out because there are too many to mention. And I don't want to offend anyone by mentioning almost all of them, but not all of them. So the first one is Beyond Measure with Christina Whitlock. This is one of my personal favorites to listen to because she is so encouraging and real, and she just has this wonderfully listenable style to the way she presents ideas and a real diversity in her shows. Her episodes are kind of similar to mine in my first podcast in that they're like 15, 20 minutes most of the time, sometimes even shorter. So they're little bite-sized chunks, which I just love because you get the idea. You don't get any waffle or tangents. You just get the one thing, it's encapsulated, and you feel like you can properly digest. So that is Beyond Measure with Christina Whitlock. And the other one I'm going to mention is not actually for teachers officially, it's for parents. It's been running around the same amount of time as Vibrant Music Teaching. Maybe it started a little bit earlier. And that is Piano Parent Podcast with Shelley Davis. I've been on this show twice. So I am a little bit biased in that regard, but I just love what Shelley is doing and how accessible it is to parents, and I highly recommend teachers listen to that as well. I'm going to give you 3 other recommendations that are not really to do with music teaching, but I think they can inform your music teaching journey. The first one is Hidden Brain. This is a podcast about basically the psychology behind little confusing things that people do or say, or contradictions in people's behavior. I think it can be a great way to see inside people's minds and thought processes. The next one is No Stupid Questions. This is from the Freakonomics Radio Network. So their original podcast is Freakonomics. I like that too. But my favorite is No Stupid Questions. It's Angela Duckworth, who many of you may know from Grit and her work in that area, and Stephen Dubner, who's the original creator of Freakonomics Radio and the co-author of the book. The two of them just get together and talk about an interesting question. And again, it unpacks a lot of psychology type things because that's Angela's background, but Stephen also brings a bit of the economics ideas to the table, although he's actually a journalist, but his background is in a lot of economics at this stage because of Freakonomics work. So I just find their conversations together fascinating, and I really feel like they can be applied to much of what we do as teachers as well. The last one I'm going to recommend is for when you just need a little diversion. It's called Every Little Thing. It's from Gimlet. That's the name of the podcast network that it's a part of. And Every Little Thing is just someone calls up with a question like something interesting that they've seen or wondered about. So they're the kinds of questions you might ask yourself late at night when you're sleep deprived. And the host will get an expert on and dive into that specific topic, whatever it may be. It's always entertaining, it's always fun, it always takes me out of the moment, and sometimes that's what you need. So don't ever be afraid to listen to a podcast that's just for fun, just for giggles, while you do your chores or your mindless tasks, or just sit down and listen to it, because that is as much a part of being a great teacher as the active work and the learning is. Let me know what your favorite podcasts are in the comments below. I can't wait to get new recommendations from you. And if it's your first time ever listening to podcasts, let me know how it goes. Let me know whether you enjoy it. I would love to hear from you.